important because of what's happening nationwide. The policies, unfortunately, of this administration to separate families, to do what they call zero tolerance, really has hurt not only our reputation, divided people more severely, caused more prejudice and racism, and that's caused violence and abuse. That trauma is very important to deal with. It's important for attorneys, for mental health professionals, for medical practitioners, for advocates, and for all our systems of care to become much more educated on trauma so they can convert their systems to trauma-informed care so we can help at least stop or empower those who have been victimized.
So I would say that the topic of human trafficking is important because it is a multi-million-dollar industry and is affecting citizens in San Diego, not only the victims of human trafficking, but also community members at large. And this is a topic that is ever-changing and is something that I think individuals need to be more informed about, both in the public as well as in all of the individual sectors. Law enforcement, politicians, legislators need to be more informed about what's going on so that they can make changes appropriate to helping victims of human trafficking.
I think it's important for governments and people to come together, especially with regard to international conferences, to talk about issues like human trafficking, migration. As we all know, these problems transcend international borders. They know no boundaries. So it's really important for us to come together and not only talk about the problems that we're seeing, but potential solutions.
So, issues surrounding immigration, family separation, the trauma that's happening to these children and these families are incredibly important. We know that this is having a long-term impact both on the individuals that it's affecting and society and the community at large. And so the whole point of this conference was bringing people together to bring that awareness and increase the awareness about what's happening in the lives of these individuals and how it's going to continue to affect us as a community and as a society so that we can all be doing our part to address it and work on creating a better situation.
I think many of the topics we discussed today are very, very important and are a pivotal part of the everyday lives of many people that are living in a much more vulnerable situation. And I think it's our responsibility and our duty to learn about these situations so that we can find our own way to fight for social justice.
It is critically important to know how to speak to this particular population. They're a population that's very different than a regular population that maybe has always grown up in the United States and doesn't have any of the same kinds of concerns or experience or even life experience. Knowing the kinds of scenarios that immigrant victims find themselves in, knowing where they've been and knowing how they've been treated is really so different that without that background information, it's virtually impossible to provide the level of care and the quality of services that we want to provide.
So actions moving forward, I think, would be making sure that awareness, education, prevention is being really focused upon for the purposes of making sure that individuals don't fall into a life where they are committing crimes or purchasing sex, and ultimately making sure that we are protecting as many individuals as we can be from the victimization of human trafficking.
One thing is we really need to look seriously at our policies. The policies have been challenged in court, really need to continue to move forward because the way it's disrupting the families, the children, is just absurd. To even think that our country does that any country would do that, is barbaric. This is the 21st century. So part of what we have to do is stand together. We really have to unite and give a single message that in this day and age, prejudice, oppression, racism, and all the isms are not acceptable. And if we're going to have a zero tolerance policy, it should be zero tolerance against all the isms, racism, prejudice, sexism, and on and on. That's where we need to go in our systems, in our policies, in our politics.
The common theme that I'm hearing at these conferences is that there is an issue around vulnerability. Women, men, and children in particular are vulnerable to a number of things. One of them is migration, forced migration. There's illnesses, there's abuse, there's neglect, there's domestic violence happening everywhere, there's human trafficking. So these are the types of issues that oftentimes force people to migrate. And both countries, I think, especially Mexico and the United States, need to be aware of these issues. And we really need to sit down and talk about policies that are trauma-informed, and we need to do everything in our power to make sure that children are not being separated from their parents, for example. Just by doing that, I think we will be able to accomplish a whole lot on this side, and certainly on the side of Mexico.
Well, I mean, it's part of the reason why we're here. It's just drawing attention to it. It's putting it on the public stage, putting it out there locally, nationally. I mean, these are not issues that are just present here in San Diego. They're definitely present here in San Diego, given our location next to the Mexico border, but this is not unique to just where we are, and this information needs to be disseminated, and more people need to get involved and become aware of what's happening and that they have the capacity to do something about it.
Moving forward, the best thing we can do is educate ourselves as to what this population needs, how they're different, what might be the potential barriers to reporting, why are there delays in reporting, what fears do they have, what concerns do they have. Without knowing the answers to these questions, it's very hard to be able to connect with them and really gain the level of their trust and cooperation that we need moving forward, whether it's delivering services or whether it's prosecuting crime. We need to understand this population a lot better than we do.
I think there are many actions to be taken, and I think it's important that each of us finds their own way, finds their own path. It can be through our professions, through our careers, or through doing some volunteering work too. But it's important that each of us finds whatever they think they can contribute to the cause.